Good morning, everyone. Well, it's been quite some time since I've been back over here, and I think the last time was when we had Kathy Pollard giving a ladies' class, and my wife brought the ladies with her, and they had all met on the side there, and I think that's where they met. But anyway, that was really the last time that we were actually in this building, and but I've been here before, maybe 2-3 times, and so it's really great to be back. And I know that there's probably members here that have not, maybe not seen me before, or maybe have never heard about the work on the reservation. And I hope that this report that I bring today will help you to understand a little bit more of what it's like to be in the mission field. And it's it's something that we love to do, and we know that your prayers are there for us. You're lifting up your prayers for the work there, and we really appreciate that, because there's times that we do really need your prayers, and every so often we'll get a phone call or even a text saying that you're in our prayers, and so we really appreciate that. This morning, let me begin by first saying that the Navajo Reservation, where we're at, is just on the other side of the New Mexico-Arizona borderline, and there. I always tease people. I said, yeah, I can get a rock, and I can just toss a rock over into New Mexico, you know. That's how close we are. But here on the Navajo Reservation, we got, originally they were 9 congregations. We are more on the Arizona side, and then New Mexico side, and then a little bit of Utah, but we're nowhere in Colorado. So you see that that part where Colorado meets the Four Corners, and so we are surrounded around that Four Corner area. Now, we have these congregations that are on the reservation, on the Navajo Reservation. We usually try to have a monthly meeting every sometimes it changes, but we try to shoot for every third Sunday, or Saturday, I should say, third Saturday. And we try to get all the congregations to come in together, and mostly it's just the preachers. So it becomes more of a preacher's meeting, but it's a nice Bible study that we are involved in. And so the arrow that you see right up on the very top there is Montezuma Creek, and they are no longer active. The preacher has went back to Texas or Oklahoma. I don't exactly remember where he went, but we have Gallup. They're Crown Point way on the right, and then Gallup in the green here, but we're just right up Fort Defiance, and then there's Kintlichee there. And way off to the right side, you see Tuba City. Now, Tuba City is a congregation that has not been involved with the rest of us. They kind of keep their distance. I'm not sure why. We've been trying to invite them to the Bible studies. We've been trying to invite them to the Bible camps, the VBS that we have. And so this year, I think I finally made a good connection, and I talked to the preacher, and he said he would love to try to come to our next meeting that we have there in Fort Defiance. So that's great news. The homes that we live in on the reservation, and I say we because I say my family still lives in homes like these. The Hogan, we grew up in a Hogan that didn't have a floor, just as you would see in this picture there on the top left-hand corner. you see that there's dirt on the floor. This Hogan has not been used for a while. You could tell because when you're using it, you're packing down that dirt, and it almost becomes so hard. I mean, my grandma would be out there; she would be sweeping the floor, and you know, how do you sweep a dirt floor? You know, you just get more dirt. So, but it becomes hard, but that's, you know, I guess that's a good thing, because when you're building a hot fire, you don't have to worry about the floor burning. And so, but you see the house on the, I mean, it's not a house, but it's a little sweat lodge on the bottom left. There's a sweat lodge there. And what they would do is they would carry some like river rocks in there, or some of those lava rocks in there, and they'll build a fire in there, get those rocks real hot. And when they go in, they'll cover the entrance with a blanket, with a nice thick blanket, a wool blanket that they had weaved, and they would take some water in there and just sprinkle the water, just like a sauna. It works the same way, and they would have their prayer meetings inside that little sweat lodge, and so you see some snow around the Hogan there, and we're still getting snow today. We talked to our daughter. She says, looking out the window right now, she says, man, it's just coming down like crazy. And so we're, you know, around the building, our snow is already, you know, still this high around the building. And when it melts, it gets ugly, muddy. And we got lots of water. And we had one day just before winter hit, the monsoon season was coming in, and the members were having to take their shoes off to go back out to their vehicles, and they're walking in the water, getting into their vehicles. And that's, but we are in a very, I say that because we're in a very corner of a parking lot, and all the water comes down to our area. And so I've been wanting to do something of how we might be able to deflect that water away from the building. And I'll show you a picture of that a little later. But most of the homes right now, I talked about the Hogan, but the Hogan is, they're kind of weeding those out now. They're more used for ceremonial purposes, but there's still a lot of people living in them. Most of them have gone to homes that are just like this one here. It's probably maybe 16 feet wide, and maybe 20 feet long, 24 feet long. And you've all seen those shed houses that they sell along the highways. That's what they buy as homes, and then they try to insulate them, and then but you know, most homes, they're not even insulated. It gets cold, so they have a wood stove in there, so the wood becomes very important to the Navajo people out there. The sheep, when we were young, we used to have sheep. My grandma had about 100 heads of sheep, and every summer, not every summer, but every so often, I don't know how many years that go by, but we would, as children, we would all take the sheep down and about 3 miles, and we would go to the chapter house, and the chapter house would have this big event of where they would put on this thing on for maybe 3 or 4 days, where they would have sheep dipping. In other words, it would be like a long bathtub, probably the length of this stage here, and they would throw these the sheep in, the goats in, and they would start in one end, and they would throw them into the water, and they would start going on the side, and you have people all along the way, some of them with the staff that Moses carried that came around like that, and when one turned the wrong way, they would take it and bring it back and bring it on, and we would be there with the forks dunking their heads in every so often, and we would love it. That was the great part of this whole thing, and that was, kids love to be around water. We love to see the big billy goats with the long horns, trying to get in there, dunk them, and the rams with those big old windy horns. I mean, it was a great sight for us to be a part of when we were kids. But we don't see those days anymore. But we still have the sheep. The sheep are very precious to the Navajos, and they, that's their meal. And they have to continue to make their livestock grow. The home on the left side, on the bottom, there's a little shade house. In Navajo, they call that the chaha'o. It's a shade house where they, in the mornings in the summertime, they're out there. They do most of their cooking out there, and then my grandma on the right-hand side, she was weaving. She weaves a lot of rugs. I mean, she weaves rugs for the in front of the bed and for the entranceway, and everything's all covered with her whole floor is covered with rugs, and so, we one day I noticed that when I shook her hand, she had her finger, and her finger was basically, when she held her finger like this finger here was basically like that, and it was because she would just grab her tool and start knocking it down, and for the years that she's been doing that, her finger just kind of formed to that tool because she's used it all her life. She's been weaving rugs ever since she was a little girl, and so she's no longer living now, but she's gone on. Now, the picture on this here, the hogan that you see on the top corner there, that hogan was built right behind the Fort Defiance Hospital. The hospital has, I guess, there are certain tribal members, Navajo members that prefer this ceremonial healing, and they want a medicine man to come in to perform some of these healings for them, and they have a strong belief in that, and what they believe, that it's not only for the healing of their body but for their mind, and so that's why they hang on to that so tightly. And that is one of the things that we have to try to get through. I guess it's a barrier that causes us to reach that person's inner soul, so that they can see who their real Creator is, and that that there is a God. There is a God, and most people will say, yes, we know there's a God. We pray to God, but how do they pray to God? And it's always, that's the question, because it becomes something that where you go and you're trying to help them understand this. But when there was a time before I became a Christian, it was in 2003 that I obeyed the gospel, and I became a man that just fell in love with God's word, and I look back to my past and I say, wow, that's how far off can we be? We can be way off. Our belief system is so far left that it's hard. We try to bring people at least to the center of where they can see both sides, and sometimes that's where it stops. And so there was a time in my life that I really got desperate, and this was before I became a Christian. But I got desperate because my mom always told me, she says, do not ever get caught up in the traditional way. She says, and she's the one that brought us up in the church. We were brought up in a Pentecostal church, and so. But when we were kids, we were always on the front row. My mom had all of us. There were 7 of us. We were all sitting in the front row, and my mom was a single parent, and she had us in church 4 times a week. And can you imagine what that did to me at 16 years old? I'm churched out. I'm churched out because I went 4 times a week, every week until I was 16 years old. And when I left and I went down to Phoenix, and I thought, I'm finally out. You know, that's not how we should feel about the church. There was something wrong. I was missing something. And if we're missing that one thing, then church will never be the way it's supposed to be. And that was what I was missing. I was missing that love for God. That should have been the core of my belief, the love for God. And yet, I looked at it as, do we have to? You know, it becomes something that pulls us away, and then here I am. I'm wanting answers to my life, and I want answers now. And I can't wait. I can't wait on God. I want answers now. And so I go and call up a friend. I say, you know, this is what I'm going through. He says, why don't you give the medicine man a try? So I said, okay. He gives me a number to call the medicine man. I called the medicine man. He says, sure. Let's meet tomorrow. He says, he gave me a location to meet him, and the price was $500. Wow. Well, I had to come up with $500 real quick. And I went. Why? Because I wanted answers. I really wanted answers. And so as I was sitting in that hogan, the wife had the fire going. The medicine man had his blankets out. We were sitting, and his pillows and whatever. We were sitting there, and he just kind of made a circle on the dirt before us. And then his wife comes over. She opens up the stove, and she gets the shovel, and she gets the hot ashes out. She brings it over and pours it into that circle. And then the medicine man kind of just smooths it out a little and lets it simmer down a little. Before all of that took place, the medicine man is asking me questions of what I'm going through, and I'm giving him answers. I'm giving him all of these answers to the questions that he's asking me, and then I'm telling him more, and I'm telling him more. Well, I wasn't using my head. What I should have done was tell him, you're the medicine man, why don't you tell me what's going on with me? I didn't realize I gave him all the answers. And so as we looked at this pile of ashes starting to simmer down, you could see that it's starting to turn white a little. He starts to point out certain things. He says, you see that bear right there? Yeah, I see a bear. You know, when you look into the clouds, you say, look at that. I see Pinocchio. I see, I see a dog over there. I see a ship. You know, we can see things in the clouds. And that's exactly what he was doing with these ashes as they were starting to form in certain ways. And then he started telling his story to me and what that meant. And he was telling me exactly what was going on in my life because I gave him all those answers. And I'm believing all of this. I said, wow, you know, I wasn't catching on to that. But the final answer that he gave me, I might as well have taken out a quarter heads or tails. Because he couldn't give me an answer because I didn't know the answer. He gave me an answer, but it was false. That same day I had my son, he was getting ready to do motocross. And I asked him, I said, I want a prayer done for him. I don't want him to get hurt. Well, we went through the process again. Paid another $300. That's $800 that medicine man is making right there. And that week, next week, and we went to the races. My son got hurt, broke his leg or his foot. And I thank God that happened, because never did I ever go back to seek a medicine man. My whole trust is put in God, and that's where it needs to be. We sometimes have to go through changes in our life, and I understand that. And that's why it's easy for me to work with the Navajo people, to bring them to a point where I'm at, so that they can fall in love with God. Here are some of the challenges that we have on the reservation. When we first moved out to Fort Defiance, we came back from Denver. Of course, we were already living in Kayenta at this time. Never really paying any attention to anything that was, as far as what was ruining us on the Navajo reservation. But here's some things that the traditional belief, they believe in the created and not the creator. When my daughter was probably about 8 years old, 9 years old, just the same age as our granddaughter, that is she's our daughter now. We adopted her. You'll see her a little later this morning. And so we actually went to, I took my daughter to see a medicine man. And this was before I went to this medicine man for myself. And I only did this because of the grandparent. The grandparent was really trying to push me to take my daughter to a medicine man. And I finally gave in. But I was teaching her all along that, it's God. God is the one. He's the one that we need to turn to, because that was what my mom taught me. I only went in that direction to that medicine man because I was I needed a desperate answer right now. But for the most part of it, my belief was saying, I don't need that. I need God. And I was trying to teach my children that. And so when we went to this medicine man, he started praying. And he says, I'm going to be singing this song, and it's my prayer song. And he says, in this prayer song, I'm going to be singing, and he says, I want you to hold on to this rattle. There's 2 rattles. He says, I want you to hold on. And as I start singing, and as I'm getting louder, he says, I want you to start squeezing harder and harder. Right? And then for kids, when you're squeezing hard, you start to shake. And it starts to rattle. And that's what he was trying to get her to do. But my daughter's just sitting there, and she's thinking, Dad, all I was thinking about was that you said that we're supposed to be praying to God. And I could hear this man saying that the power is going to be coming from the sacred mountains. We have 4 sacred mountains around the reservation, and he's going to be praying to all of those mountains, and that's where the power is going to come in, and you're going to start shaking that thing. And he says, and then that's where the healing starts. And she says, it never shook. And I said, that's good. I said, the Navajo way is about believing in the created, not the creator. I said, we believe in a creator. And I'm saying all of this before I even became a Christian. And so Another thing that we struggle with is alcohol and, of course, substance. There are so many different substances that are being used right now. Hand cleaners. We have to hide our hand cleaners coming through the door now in the church building. We had one member bring in his, a cup with water or whatever. He'll get water, and when no one's looking, he'll be drinking it. And now his girlfriend just called me the other day, and she says, "You know what he's drinking now? He's drinking windshield washer fluid." I mean, the things that they if it says alcohol on the label, they're going to give it a try. And 9 out of 10 people are directly affected, whether, they are doing it themselves or not. But even it just takes one person out of the family to affect the whole family. And so that's how bad it is out there. There are so many people that are struggling with this. And so we need your prayers. We need your prayers, because this is a tough barrier to break. And so we're doing our best, as tough as it is. And suicide is another. We got a phone call from when we first moved out to Fort Defiance, as we were working with the construction of our new facelift on the building. We got a phone call from a young man who was helping with the construction, and he was attending services, and his family. We went and studied with the family, and he was bringing his family, and yet we got a phone call from his wife and said that he's trying to commit suicide, and this was in the middle of the night. And I told Pam, I said, "I'm going to go over there." She says, "Not alone." She says, "I'm going with you." She says, "You don't ever want to be put yourself in a position alone with someone that's suicidal." And so she went with me, and we went and visited him, and we talked with him, and so fortunately we were able to calm him down. We were able to bring him back to his senses, and he was back in service, in worship. He had missed about a month of service before that, but he was back in worship with his family. And it got to a point that where he was the only one coming, his family was no longer coming. But this has happened at least a half a dozen times that we've been there so far, that we get a phone call in the middle of the night by a family member saying that their child is wanting to commit suicide, their spouse is wanting to commit suicide, and so we're on the rescue. We've even gone out in the evening, about maybe 6 o'clock in the evening, looking for someone about 30 miles away in the woods, where you don't know what road goes which way and we're out there, and we find ourselves coming back home when the sun is coming up, because we've been searching all night. And we finally found that person, and we took that person home. And so this, I'm just giving you some of the things that we've experienced while we've been working out there. Our work is not always in the building. Our work is in the field. Wherever we're called, that's where we're going. We can't ever get comfortable with saying that this is the work right here. Our work is always with the people where they're at. And so I bring this next portion up in this report, because this has been a major downfall for the church. I remember the last time I came, most of these pews the pews were full, and they may probably fill up when the kids come back in, and when the classes come in, and when people start coming in at 10:30, because they don't all come for the Bible class. just as it is in Fort Defiance. You know, we only have like a half a dozen in our study in the morning, and then when worship comes, people start coming in again. And so, you know, the pandemic has really damaged our attendance, and it's mainly because of fear. People are afraid. They're afraid of that, of that disease, and it seems like we're trying to do the best that we can, but people have gotten comfortable with just watching on the internet, or they'll say, yeah, we've been watching sermons on TV, and so, you know, and I always tell them, I said, you know, a lot of times we can be distracted by a lot of those things from what we really need to be doing. And I always bring up the verse in Hebrews that talks about our attendance and how we should make it a habit to assemble together. And so that was one thing that, you know, we really started, you know, we're hurting because of that. And just a couple of months ago, they finally lifted the removal of the mask. So we're just now in our second month with no mask in public, but there's still maybe 80% of people that will still wear them because they got comfortable with them, or they just haven't heard about the release of the mask itself. And so that's kind of what we're looking at too. And so I also noted a 57-hour stay-at-home week down to that happened a lot there on the reservation. It was kind of nice. You walk out, reservation is already quiet, but we kind of live around the school area, so you're hearing vehicles going down the road, and you'll hear loud mufflers and whatever. But during this time, all through the weekend, you don't hear or see one vehicle on the road. And if there is a vehicle on the road, that vehicle will be pulled over. If they do not have a doctor's note for an appointment, or a note from their employer that they need to be at work for whatever reason, because most of the businesses were shut down too, whether they worked outside of town, maybe they worked in Gallup and they still had to go to work. If they didn't have that note, it was a $1,000 fine. And so that's why you would not see one vehicle on the road. They didn't have the $1,000 to pay. And so, but that's how strict it was on the reservation. And we're just now finally coming out of it. And so I'm hoping for good changes. Again, keep that in your prayer. I want to share how we, our building, we have this facelift that I mentioned earlier. It's more than a facelift. We had this one building here that was already there. It's just a one-room cabin, about 28 by 35 or 40. But it's just a one room, no restrooms, just a one room for worship. And where we're standing is, I took a picture after the fact, but that's a floor that's already being installed there. But that was all dirt that you would have to walk up to. And so you have up here where you have the parking lot. And all along this parking lot, you have these businesses, the trailers that are up in the front. They're all lined up and nice and straight. And then when you get to our building is way back here, out of sight. And so the thing that I thought about was like, you know what? We've been going out asking people to come to the church, and they would say, where is the church? And we would explain. They said, I didn't know there was a church back there. And it was funny that we during one time we had VBS going on. We had projects going on, painting and stuff, and we had these people running to the Ace Hardware store in Window Rock and saying, we need this kind of paint, this, and it was often that they were going by, and then this guy over at the True Value that works there, he says, so what are you guys doing? Now, you guys are always coming in here for something. He says, what are you guys doing? He says, oh, we're working over at the church there. We're doing some painting. What church is that? He says, that's the Church of Christ. No, they said, they didn't even say Church of Christ. They said, that's the church that's over at, and they tried to explain where it was at. And they said, oh, no, you don't need to tell me where it's at. Just tell me the name of the church. I know where all the churches are. It's the Church of Christ. Where's that one at? Where is that one at? You see, and so this was one of the reasons why I said, our building sits way back there. Let's bring it up with everybody here. Let them see this building over here, and let them wonder, what is that? I've never seen that over there. And they'll come in over and they'll see our sign. And so, and so we have this construction that we started with. This became a classroom that we had. And then we started this foundation, building the foundation to bring this to more of a beginning of what the building was going to look like. And we had the here at the new what is that? I'm trying to think of the university here, New Mexico, UNM. UNM. Is that right? Okay, UNM. And anyway, the Christian Center there. I talked to Garrett, and Garrett came over. He says, "Hey Terry," he says, he gave me a call. He says, "Is there a project that you guys want to get done?" He says, "We're looking for something that's maybe 3-4 years that we can continue to go." I said, "Yeah, come on out." And so that's when this whole thing started, and it took 5 years, and they kind of had other commitments to see. So we're not 100% done. We don't have heaters, regular heaters in this building, but that's what the building looks like right now. And so this, we started painting signs. We put up a sign there so it can be seen. Unfortunately, when we were leaving this yesterday, this whole sign was laying on the ground. The wind was so strong that it broke the 4x4s that we used to put it up, and it broke that. And here's a little video that I want to play, because this is for our VBS. I go out picking up kids. And if you would just look at the amount of kids that are coming out of this. I wish the person that was recording this would have gotten a picture of the backside of that van to show that there's nobody sneaking in from the backside. But I made sure that those back doors remained closed. And if you look at all of these kids coming out, and you're saying, how in the world did they all fit inside that van? Right? It's like they just keep coming. No one's making a circle, or their focus is on whatever's going on the side there, and they're just doing their thing there, and so it's like, okay, so when is it going to stop, right? I don't know if you were able to count that, but I think there was like 27, 28 kids and every time we went over the speed bump, oh, we had a load. We had a load in this van. And so, but only on the reservation can you do that. You cannot do that here in Albuquerque. You get pulled over real quick, but only on the reservation can you do that. And so here's some of the activities that were going on for our VBS, and that's our group there for our VBS. That's every year it's like that. Even we had VBS last summer, and we had a pretty good turnout. And so some of the projects that we had been doing is the sidewalk. I wish this sidewalk was a foot higher, because the water just comes right over that, and it floods out and it washes out inside our building, and it goes down and it goes underneath the building. And so we need some help in this area, if anything, to help raise maybe tear that out and raise the sidewalk so that the water, and then we like to taper off the ground. And so we had a new water pump put in a few years back, so that's working. We've already had to replace the pump a couple of times, and running electrical, and then going out to do projects for some of the members that have been coming that needed to work on their own house. And so right behind our building, we have some gardening that we try to do, and we only get like 3 or 4 months of gardening. We have a small window of warm weather for our gardening. And if we don't get started on time, then we're not going to have anything at the end, because that window is very small, because we have all of that other stuff that's there. I just want to add this real quick. The lady here, that's her daughter. The lady here, we lost this, our member. She was a Christian. She obeyed the gospel years back, and she was coming. She was always walking to church. Didn't have a ride, but she walked to church every Sunday. And she didn't show up for about a month, and we realized that something devastating had happened. Her daughter called me and said that they were finding different parts of her body here and there. She was murdered. And it took them almost a whole year to get this thing together. And her daughter came to me and she says, Terry, she says, I don't know what to do. So we sat down with her, we were studying with her, and she obeyed the gospel. And we were finally able to, do the services for her mom when we got the light to do that. Our daughter, during this pandemic, she obeyed the gospel. And so this was such a blessing that we were able to get our daughter. She was sitting in the front row there, and then she says, she came up, she was crying. She says, Dad, she says, I don't want to wait any longer. And so we're grateful for that. And there's our granddaughter. This lady right here is Zena. She worked at Bash's, and her daughters were coming to church at one point, and then they had all gone after they graduated. They had gone, and they after they had left, she was always questioning us. She would call us over, and she started asking questions about the church, and then she would ask for prayer, and then we just got to know her by going to Bash's. And after so long, she started becoming, coming to church, and we're studying with her, and she obeys the gospel, and so now she's a good member. And I know I'm going overboard here, but during this pandemic, we had a lot of donations, and it started out with this picture right here that just 2 bikes came in. And we sent this picture out to the people that had donated the bikes, and they said, wow, we really loved the kids. We didn't know they were going to take those bikes like that. And next thing you know, they gave me a call. They said, could you use about 20 more bikes? They said 10. And I said, sure, we'll give them out to the kids. And then next thing you know, they said, well, we're up to about 20. And then I said, can you handle 30 bikes? And I said, well, there's plenty of kids around here. And so next thing you know, they come with this trailer and another, and 50 bikes. 50 bikes that and we're handing them out Bibles along with the bikes, and everybody that's coming to the church, and we're just going out to the community, visiting, and encouraging people to come on a Sunday. And when they come, we surprise them and say, guess what? We got some extra bikes we would like to give you. And so, not worship, because we wouldn't really have worship, but, after a Bible study or something. And so, but this was great. And we even had our plumbers. These are our plumbers on the right-hand side. They even got a bike. And a grandpa came out picking up a bike for his daughter. And so just some of the things that we had to go through. Every year we have to get wood. this is a group that comes out just about every year from Oklahoma. They come out, and you can see the size of those trees. And it was funny when they came out from Oklahoma, and I drove them out there, and I said, "Here, okay, let's get to work." And they're going and get in their truck, and they come out with these little chainsaws. What is that going to? You know, and so I pulled out my chainsaw. Well, it's about that long, but it's about 20 inches. And the word got out, and someone decided to go ahead and give us a 27-inch chainsaw, and that really helped the situation. And so we help the people we begin with the elderlies, and then and the members of the church when we're giving out wood. And then this is my son and his family. They're helping me load up a truck for a delivery. And so we do all the splitting at the church building. We're out delivering to this home right here. You can see the shed type building. We're out delivering to this elder here. And so that's the kind of work that we're in over there. That's the way we were reaching out to people. That's the way. And I believe that it all starts with love. We need to show people that we care. And we can't just bring people in by just being there. But we got to show that we got to be active and show people that we care. Thank you very much.